Welcome to Automedics, transmitting from the studios of NTA 2, Victoria Island Network Center in Lagos. My name is John Quincy, they call me LJ, and I have with me this morning Ibrahim Ogundele.
Good morning.
Alright, we're here as we usually do to take your car questions, resolve your car issues, give you solutions to those car problems, also let you know some of the latest things that are happening in the auto world or in the auto industry. Those are what we're here to do this morning. But with the tradition of this program, we usually would take a couple of car questions once we resume the show. And this morning we have a few questions here coming from our listeners from Facebook. The first one says, I used Opel Centra 2.0. I ring the engine. Since then, the acceleration is not normal. When it pick up, it would seize back. I have changed fuel pump filter, yet it's not working. What can I do?
Well, I'm looking at the angle of he rings the engine, yes. And several things he would have done at those points. Number one, they would have set the timing of the car, and also the process of ringing it too. There are some things that would have been brought in, probably the rings that have been used and also the metals. So if the engine runs fine, but except for the fact that the acceleration, and he is looking at the side of the pump. Sometimes when you have an issue with the timing, either probably the timing is a little bit advanced or a little bit retarded, you could be having a situation whereby you would be accelerating it. Either it delays in acceleration, or probably after certain times when you are accelerating, the car would probably not respond any longer. So I'm going to be thinking that I'll be advising that probably they should recheck the timing of the car. And if possible, you have the check engine lights on, just run a scan too.
Definitely. Since he has already gone for fuel pump, so you should check the timing. Also, you can check the spark plugs and wiring of the vehicle. Another one here says, my car had a bad alternator, so my mechanic replaced but left the key in the ignition and removed the battery terminals. What could this likely cause?
Well, on today's automobile, whenever the key is on the ignition lock and there is an interaction between the key, because it has what we call a transmitter, and the antenna which you have in there, an RFID signal is being transmitted. Anytime when you disrupt that interruption, probably why the key is in there, it could cause misinformation whereby the RFID that was known to the car before would be knocked off, because anything that would cause spark can actually knock off any RFID signal or code that has been stored. So there's a possibility that after sometimes you could have a case whereby the key would not be recognized any longer whenever you want to start the car. You start to have a case whereby your key would not start the car. You start to have issues with probably security immobilizer issues.
Yeah, that's what you run the risk of having, because if the immobilizer packs up while they're taking up the battery terminal, that will be the end. The car will not be able to start, so you need to reprogram. Now, there's another one here. It says, the Honda Accord 98 cranked, but engine does not start. Ignition was tested and okay, battery okay, but still engine does not start. What can still be done, sir?
Well, when he says ignition tested, probably he's talking about the sparks.
Because being in 98, I want to believe he's using a distributor.
Okay, distributor.
So they call that the ignition on the street. So they probably tested it somewhere.
So there is spark to the engine. And one thing he didn't tell us is probably if there is fuel, that is if the injector nozzles are spraying fuel.
Yes.
But assuming that the injector nozzles are spraying fuel and likewise you have spark on the engine, then other things they would have to look at now is the compression you have on the engine. Sometimes you could have a case where the compression of the engine is low, and you might have fuel going into the engine, you might have spark, but because of that low compression, the engine would not start. Or probably you have issues with the rings, you have issues with the valves, probably a bent valve that is not allowing compression to build up inside the engine. So this would also not make the car to start, even when you have every other thing needed. All right.
Basically, your mechanic should do more like a checklist where he gets to itemize things he needs to check. Compression of the engine, check if the security is locking it down, because the security locks it down, you might test the ignition somewhere else, that's the distributor now, and the distributor actually works well, but it would not start the vehicle. The security, the fuel pump, the crankshaft position sensor, if it has one, all these are items you need to check, but you need to have a list that you're checking with, so you don't just stay on the same thing over and over again. And those are our first 3 questions on the show this morning. We'll be going on a quick break. When we get back, we'll be having a discussion on Automedics School.
Do you know that you can actually drive your vehicle without engine oil for 50 kilometers? This is very, very achievable, all thanks to Polytron. Still a doubting Thomas? Let our technician prove this to you.
We are about to drain the engine oil of this car to see the power of Polytron, the product that has nanotechnology buried in it, because we believe that Polytron is already working on it. And after doing that, put the car together and we drive it around.
Now that you have seen the power of Polytron, buy a bottle today to increase the lifespan of your engine, reduce fuel consumption, save cost also on expensive repair.
Welcome back to the show. Still Automedics, reaching you from NTA 2, Lagos Network Center. Ibrahim, people out there will be wondering, okay, these people come on TV and they are able to talk about car issues, able to give answers to car questions and all that. How did it start for them? Now, basically out there are many ways you can become an automotive technician or become a car repairer. One of it is the traditional becoming an apprentice and then take years to learn the basic skills and all that. But Automedics has a package that could actually help you achieve that goal in a very short period of time, and that's our training school.
Of course, yes, and the way it has been structured, makes it very easy for anyone at all to fix into the program. So you never can tell if you are interested in any automobile training. The structure is already there for you at Automedics, in which you can easily key in and also get to learn what you want to know as regards automobile, and even become a professional car technician if you want.
Definitely. And also for those who are interested in short courses, I just got this new car. I feel this car is way more intelligent than I think it should be, and I think I need to learn something about it. We can also give you one-on-one short courses where you come in and you just take probably programming, for instance, how to program car keys, ECUs and all that, or how to run a diagnosis. You have a scan tool but you don't know how to use it. We can also help you with such short training. And also if you have a fleet and you want to train your drivers, you want to improve your drivers on how they can maintain the car so you can get productivity out of your fleet, we can also help with that. All of those are what we do on Automedics. All right, going now to car questions. We'll take a few car questions here. Hello, I have a 2000 Honda Accord. My car has that thick gray smoke coming out of my tailpipe. I checked to see if it could have been a blown head gasket, but my car never overheated and there was no milky like debris on the oil cap. The car starts and runs but sometimes excites when driving over 20 miles per hour. Can someone please help me?
Well, if it is a thick blue smoke you're seeing, then that's probably a sign of oil being burnt inside the engine, and this could be as a result of a bad oil ring or a sticking valve already. Sticking rings you are having on the engine already. It could also be as a result of a bad valve seal, and you also have something called the PCV. On virtually every engine, the PCV is more or less like a window for the engine to be able to expel out some of the pressure that might be built around the crankcase area. So your technician needs to check certain things for you. The PCV is one of what he needs to check for you. Sometimes the PCV might just be stuck open, and you would have a case whereby engine oil is getting into the combustion chamber, and you get to see the smoke, or probably it is blocked. So these are the checks your technician needs to check for you. The PCV valve, to check if the rings are not bad, and also the valve seals you have on the engine.
Just to add to that, if your mechanic is equipped well enough, he can also do a compression test on the cylinders, because most times when a cylinder is losing oil, it will also be losing compression at the same time. So with a compression tester, you can go ahead and do a compression test on the cylinder and see if the cylinder is actually losing compression. If it does lose compression, definitely that cylinder is burning oil. They can check the tip of the spark plug to confirm that, and that would just narrow everything down. You probably need to take that engine out for overhaul. And we have another one. My car, Lexus RX 300, currently has a problem with the speedometer. It is not reading speed sensors around the wheel have been changed, still no result. Some auto electricians have said there is speedometer sensor that needs to be changed, while others say there is a box that needs to be replaced. I'm getting confused. Kindly advise.
Well, for to clear it out, for the RX350, there wouldn't be a speedometer sensor, which probably the VSS.
The VSS is what he's talking about. But if your mechanic has checked the gearbox and confirmed that at the tail of the gearbox you don't have a VSS sensor, all you just have is a dummy cover that covers it, then I think one solution to your problem is on the RX300, that's the one that runs from about 98 to about 2004, the front driver's side wheel speed sensor is responsible for the speedometer. And once that sensor is not running or the speedometer is not working, you run the risk of losing your gearbox anytime soon. So what I advise you do is get a good technician to look at the front driver's side wheel speed sensor. Apart from the sensor being responsible for giving transmitting the signal, there is a ring on the drive shaft neck, which is known as the counter, the wheel counter. If you just recently changed your drive shaft, that means when the drive shaft was changed, the counter was not transferred to the new shaft, most likely a used shaft. The counter was not transferred to it, or the counter is not placed properly. So get someone who can carefully look at the driver's side wheel. That is where the signal is supposed to come to run the speedometer if the gearbox doesn't have a VSS. All right, the last question before we go on a short break. This one is very long. It says, I use an RX300 model of Lexus. The vehicle is currently experiencing idle on ignition such that the RPM falls to the last bar on the dashboard, and when I throttle, the vehicle drags and hardly moves until after a while. The symptom persists and then moves after a while. Once I slow down, the symptom recurs, and later on, while it's still in motion, the RPM stabilizes. I've scanned the vehicle for diagnosis and fault codes. Diagnostic fault code reads P0115, P0440, P0115, and P01135. The silencer blockages were evacuated by my mechanic, but the problem still persists, resulting in increased fuel consumption. Please advise possible solution. That's a pretty long one. I don't think we should really banter much on that. What I would advise your mechanic to do, RX300 is known for one thing. When the O2 sensors, that the oxygen sensors are out, you could have black smoke and poor acceleration, poor movement. Have the oxygen sensors check. A good check for it is have them all disconnected and try to drive the vehicle without it connected. If the vehicle performs well, definitely the sensors are responsible for it. Then one known problem with RX300 again is that at the junction where the exhaust connects, that's the bank 1, bank 2, and the tailpipe connect, there is a junction there. That junction can frustrate you if a chip of the catalytic converter is locked down there. That will block it from exiting the exhaust. So have a mechanic check the exhaust properly and then check your oxygen sensors. That's as much as we can take on car questions. We'll be going on a short break. When we come back, we will take our discussion of the day, which is a continuation of what we discussed last week. That is how to best lubricate your engines.
Strong communication skills, good diagnostic skills, problem-solving skills, solid work ethics, strong technical aptitude, and up-to-date technology. Watch Automedics on your retail station as we provide clear-cut solutions to your automobile problems. Automedics, showing every Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. with a repeat broadcast at 11:30 a.m. on Saturdays. Automedics, the best hands on your automobile.
Still on Automedics, welcome back, and we're still transmitting from NTA2, Victoria Island network station. Ibrahim, you were not here last week. Myself and Dr. Ben, we were having a discussion on oil specification and how it affects modern cars. We actually talked about it as deep as we could, as time allowed us last week. So that's what we're going to continue with this morning. Now, from your own experience, what do you think the Nigerian car has as a problem when it comes to lubrication?
Well, when it comes to lubrication, one of the major problem I'm going to say is so many people get it wrong from the specification, as you have said, and because of this, many a times you get to have sludge building up on so many of those engines. So that's one. Another thing that I've observed, especially with Lagos as a typical example, is the terrain we drive in. There are so much traffic issues whereby the car has to stay in traffic, and many a times when car stays in traffic much more, there is a lot of strain on the engine oil that you have on the engine, which means the lifespan of the engine definitely is going to reduce, and also the engine oil could kick easily, which means it's going to also form sludge very easy inside the engine.
Definitely. And what I would have to add to that is that apart from the fact that when you stay in traffic for too long, your engine is just running and it's not running optimally. It's supposed to be on the road, moving, getting cool, getting hot and all that, but you're stuck in traffic. Apart from that, people tend to overflog the oil for during service. Now the oil is due for service, but you have this impression that, oh, I don't have the time, and you start to drive it like that. The oil has already broken down. A broken down oil has been oxidized.
Yes.
When the oil gets oxidized, the next thing the oil has to turn into is sludge. And once it turns into sludge, it's going to stain the whole walls of the engine, the internal areas of the engine, and it will get hardened on the walls of the engine. And this is the very point, the very genesis of engine damage. So before you know it, you see that a car that was probably in Europe for like 10 years came to Nigeria. After 2 years, you're thinking of changing the engine. And the owner has been using it without having engine issues because you overflogged the engine oil that was in the engine. So that's why last week we talked about specification. We said specification has to do with how the oil flows in the engine. Then grading has to do with the quality of the oil. For every year, the quality of oil improves. The SA is out there doing a lot of research in the laboratory trying to make sure that the engine oil we use in our cars are better for every year. So every now and then, they upgrade the standards of the oil. If your car is still using an older standard of engine oil, trust me, in no time, you'll be thinking of replacing the engine. So a little cheap tip here that I'm going to give. A lot of people also complain about hybrid cars having such issues as well. Although we're not discussing hybrid this morning, if you drive a hybrid car in hold up for too long, apart from damaging the engine with the engine oil issues, you also have battery not properly charged. Those are some of the consequences that you get to see. So when it comes to engine oil, our advice to you is get a good engine oil. Now the good thing here is
a quality engine oil is another thing. Even when you have the right specification, if you don't have a quality engine oil, some of them could even evaporate or vaporize in the engine. Or some of them would quickly form the sludge, especially in the Nigerian market. There are so many of such oils when you get to use them in your vehicle.
Now a good thing is Automedics has its own oil. So if you are out there and you've been wondering what is the specification of oil my car is supposed to use, what grade of oil should I buy, what oil will be good for my engine, Automedics has its grade of oils, and they are laced with MTC. If you don't know what MTC is about, you can Google that. It's a molecular science product, and what it does is it helps to keep the engine oil staying on the walls of the engine for even longer period. So in case maybe there is a reason, for any reason, you lost engine oil, because of the magnetic quality of this oil, that it magnetizes itself to the walls of the engine, you will not lose lubrication. Now, apart from that, it reduces friction. Friction is what increases the level of heat in the engine so much, which means the oil will not burn out too quickly, like the regular oil you buy in the market. So we have those oil. You can call our customer service line. You can come to our centers. Any of our centers, we have them all around Lagos. There is one on the island in Lekki. There is one on the mainland. You can walk into any of our centers and ask for Automedics oil. And apart from selling the oil to you, they would also school you a little bit on what the grade and specification of oil your engine is supposed to use. For instance, most people don't even know that on the oil filler cap or on the dipstick or in the user manual, the specification and grade of oil you're supposed to use for your engine is actually there.
Yes, but it's because so many car users have left this to the hands of their technician, and when they leave it to the hand of the technician, some of them are not up to date with what is in town. So for them now, they just say what they have been using over years, why they were probably apprentices. But some of these things have been made easy by manufacturers, that they put in a specific locations where you can get to see them, so that you would not make a mistake of using the wrong engine. Many times when you use the wrong engine on your car, it's always void warranty.
Yes.
And many times when you go to the manufacturer, to probably the franchise or the manufacturer itself, that my engine has so issue, they will first question you about the type of oil you use on it, and this definitely could make you be on the losing side just because you're not using the right engine oil.
Another thing I would like to educate the public about is, just because the oil is expensive doesn't mean it matches your vehicle. It could be a very expensive oil, well praised and everything. If the specifications don't match what your vehicle is required to use, there will be issues. I have a typical example with the Honda series of vehicles. We've been having them coming lately, especially the modern ones from 2013 upwards, the ones that carry the Headroom engines. We find out that the owner starts to use it. After a couple of months, it tells you that when I start it in the morning, there is this loud noise that comes from the engine, and after a while, it settles and it starts to run right.
Yes, this is very common, especially in the morning when the car has settled for a long while, because the engine oil they're using actually is thicker, and when you're using a thicker engine, the pump would have it very heavy on it to spring those oil around to the further areas as the engine and the cylinder head area of the engine,
yes.
And this would tend to create a noise. So while the pump is still trying to gather itself together, get the oil down there, that noise is already causing a lot of wear as you see it. So if you continue like that, the situation will get worse, and you would have to replace probably the head or probably the whole engine for a fix. So rather than do all this or spend his bulk of money to change the engine, why not just try using finding out the right specification of oil your car should use, and likewise use the right one.
Like we said before, ways you can get the right specification of oil that your engine is supposed to use. You can use the owner's manual. Around the last pages of the owner's manual, where you have the index, around that area, you will come across the grade of oil. It's usually written as either a 5W30, a 0W20, a 20W50, or a 0W30. Any of all these will be specified there. Once it's specified by the manufacturer, it means that is exactly what you're supposed to use on the engine. Now, if your vehicle came without a manual, you can go online, put in the vehicle make and model, do a search on the engine oil specification it's supposed to use. The reason why we are being laying so much emphasis on trying to educate you about this is because there's been too many cases of, I just bought the car a year ago, and you're telling me now that I have to do engine repairs and all that. It can be avoided. And the simple way to avoid this is get the engine oil right. Because I have a lot of people, especially on European cars, that have been reporting that why is it that these European engines, they come and they just die after a while? It is always an engine oil related issue. Automedics has engine oil that can help you bypass or boycott all such issues and use your car to the maximum. All right. So in rounding up now, because we didn't have much of engine oil related questions today. In rounding up, we've already told you some of the areas where you can get your engine oil specification. You can try the dipstick as well. Ibrahim, what are your last words?
Well, my last word to a viewer is that number one, sludge is something that is preventable on the engine.
Yes.
And one of those ways you would prevent sludge from your engine is, number one, do your maintenance as required. That is, because of our own terrain, I always advise that do not wait until the maintenance required light come on.
Yes.
Because when the manufacturer sets a maintenance required light, they are making it on an ideal situation whereby you don't face any traffic, you just drive on a smooth road, no problem, no traffic. But with our own condition here, we always advise probably 3,005 miles or 5,000 kilometers, except if you're using MTC, that's a Polytron or the Automedics grade of oil, then you can move this to about 7,000, because the MTC is going to make the engine last longer, not break down as fast as every other engine is going to be. So your maintenance required is very, very important. Do not wait until some of these lights comes on. Probably have a mileage setting for your engine oil service. Another thing is that things people do, like directing fan, taking off thermostat, they have an impact on the engine, in that they don't allow the engine to get hot as fast as they should. So this would also have an impact on the engine. So when your technician is advising that you should direct the fan, take off the thermostat, this is not an advice that you should follow. We would definitely talk about this in subsequent bulletins.
Yes.
But these are some of the tips that would allow your engine last longer and also make the engine oil to serve your engine.
Like you heard from Ibrahim, those are some of the things you need to do to make sure your engine lasts longer. When we come again your way, we'll be able to also talk about this issue and give you some really good tips on how to manage your mileage when it comes to service. And that's the much we can take on the show again this morning. The show returns again on the next edition. Do have a wonderful time.